When you're in a relationship, you expect a little give and take, compromise, support. Partnership, that's what love is supposed to be. But with my girlfriend Rachel, it felt like the word give only applied to me, and take was her full-time hobby. We'd been together for almost 2 years. I was 28, working full-time as a project manager, juggling bills, saving what I could, and paying off my own small student loan balance. Rachel, meanwhile, loved the finer things in life. And hey, I didn't mind treating her dinners out. Little gifts here and there, the occasional weekend getaway. But she had this habit of turning luxuries into expectations like she deserved them simply for existing. The tipping point came one Saturday afternoon. We were in her apartment, and she walked in proudly carrying a designer handbag. It was one of those luxury brands I'd only ever seen in glossy ads. I don't remember the exact price, but I know it was well over $2,000. She twirled around, showing it off, and said, "Don't you love it? I deserve something nice once in a while." I forced a smile, even though in my head I was doing the math. That bag was more than 2 months of my car payments. Still, I didn't say anything because honestly, arguing about money with her always spiraled into her accusing me of being cheap or controlling. Later that evening, though she dropped the bomb, we were sitting on her couch, and she turned to me with this serious look. "Babe, if you really love me, you'll help me pay off my student loans. I've been so stressed about them." I froze. Did she really just say that? I asked how much she owed, and when she casually replied, "About 40 grand, my stomach turned. She said it like she was asking me to cover a takeout order, not shoulder a life-changing financial burden. The worst part. She said it while the brand new bag sat proudly on the coffee table like some kind of mocking centerpiece. The hypocrisy was staggering. I leaned back, letting her words sink in. "So, let me get this straight. You just spent thousands of dollars on a purse, and now you're asking me to take on your student debt?" She didn't even blink. "That's different. I needed something to make me feel good, but my loans are dragging me down. If we're serious, shouldn't we support each other?" That was the moment I stopped seeing her as a partner and started seeing her for who she really was. I smiled, nodded, and said, "You're right. Partners should support each other." Then I pulled out a folder I'd prepared long ago, not for her specifically. But because I'd always been the responsible type, it wasn't her student loan statement I handed over. It was a bill of my own. And the look on her face when she saw what it was, that was priceless. Rachel took the folder from my hand with a grin that told me she thought she had one. She must have assumed I was giving her some kind of proof of my finances, maybe an outline of how I could help with her debt. Her nails, freshly manicured, clicked against the cover as she flipped it open. The grin vanished instantly. Inside was a neatly printed invoice I had drawn up myself. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Relationship expenses. Balance due." Below was a detailed list of things I'd paid for since we'd been together. Dinners, weekend trips, rent I'd covered when she was short, even the designer shoes I'd bought her last Christmas. Each item had a date, description, and amount. At the bottom, circled in red, was the grand total, $18,426.73. Her eyes widened and she sputtered, "What the hell is this?" I kept my tone calm, almost cheerful. "That's your bill. If love is measured in money, like you just implied, then I think it's only fair you settle up before asking me to take on more debt." She snapped the folder shut and threw it onto the coffee table, right next to her precious new handbag. "This isn't funny, Daniel." "I'm not joking," I replied. "You've been keeping track?" she asked, her voice sharp, as if I'd committed some sin by daring to remember what I'd given her. I shrugged. "I'm a project manager. Numbers are kind of my thing. But don't twist. This side didn't plan to charge you. Not until you tried to make my love conditional on bailing you out." Her face twisted with indignation. "That's manipulative. Relationships aren't supposed to be about keeping score." I raised an eyebrow. "But they're supposed to be about demanding tens of thousands of dollars from your partner while you're out buying luxury bags? Do you hear yourself?" Rachel crossed her arms, leaning back as if that gave her the high ground. "Every real man takes care of his woman. Chris paid off his girlfriend's loans. Why can't you be more like that?" I couldn't help but laugh. Maybe Chris's girlfriend doesn't drop thousands on handbags before asking for help. Or maybe Chris just doesn't know how to say no. Her face flushed crimson, whether from embarrassment or fury, I couldn't tell. She grabbed the folder again and flipped through the pages. as if the numbers might magically rearrange themselves into something less damning. You're unbelievable. This is petty. If you really loved me, you wouldn't care about money. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. If you really loved me, you wouldn't see me as a walking ATM. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of her wall clock. Rachel looked from the folder to me, then back at her handbag. It was as if she was realizing, maybe for the first time, that I wasn't playing her game anymore. And the silence between us said more than either of us wanted to admit. Rachel's hands trembled as she tried to shove the folder aside. Daniel, this is ridiculous. You can't just watch me, I interrupted calmly. I've been ridiculous enough letting you think it's okay to spend thousands on designer nonsense, while expecting me to handle your financial mess. Not anymore. She took a step back, like she might storm out, but then froze mid-motion. The absurdity of the situation seemed to finally register. You made a bill? She whispered, her voice shaking. That's insane. I leaned back, letting the words settle. Insane would have been me paying off your loans while ignoring what you've spent and how you treat money. This is just math. Her jaw clenched. This is humiliating. You're humiliating me? I shook my head. No, I'm exposing the reality. You asked me to pay your loans, yet you blow thousands on a bag the same week. That's the truth. That's reality. Humiliation comes later if you keep thinking love is currency. Her eyes darted to the table, then to the folder again. I could see her mind racing, trying to find an escape route. I didn't expect you to get all this. I thought you'd just say yes. A slow smile crept onto my face. Ah, there it is. The truth. You expected compliance. You expected me to bend. That's what you call love, isn't it? Rachel's face hardened. It's not like that. I need help. You know how stressed I am about loans? You need help, I repeated, leaning forward. You don't need help. You need control. And maybe a reality check. Her hands flew to her head. You're insane. How could you even? I held up my hand, letting the tension hang thick in the air. Let me make it simple. You want me to cover your loans? Sure, here's the bill for what I've already given you. Pay up, then we'll talk. Otherwise we're done. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence was deafening, and in that moment I realized the truth had finally pierced her carefully constructed bubble. She'd treated love as a transaction, and now the ledger was laid bare. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cruel. I was just showing her the consequence of her choices, the math of her manipulation. And in that charged silence, I knew one thing for certain. She had underestimated me, and that would be her biggest mistake. Rachel finally sat down heavily on the couch, staring at the folder like it had suddenly transformed into a cage. Her mouth opened and closed, trying to find words, but nothing coherent came out. I stayed calm, letting the silence stretch, letting her feel the weight of her own choices. This is petty, she finally spat, her voice trembling between anger and fear. You're making this about money instead of what? I asked softly. Instead of honesty? Responsibility? Accountability? I've supported you for 2 years. I've bought dinners, gifts, weekend getaways, and now, suddenly, love means writing me a blank check for your debts. Her hands clenched into fists. You don't understand stress. You don't understand what it's like to carry this burden. I laughed quietly. I understand responsibility. And I understand that someone who truly loved me wouldn't ask me to shoulder tens of thousands of dollars while spending recklessly. That's not love. That's entitlement. Her eyes widened, finally meeting mine. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious, I said. I leaned forward and opened the folder again, pointing to the grand total at the bottom. Do you see this? $18,000? That's me, giving, supporting, trying to keep this relationship alive. And now you want me to take on your debt? On top of all this? Her face paled, her confident mask cracking. I didn't think. You didn't think? I interrupted, voice steady, but cutting. Exactly. And that's the problem. You think this is a game? That love is a transaction? That I'm an ATM? She shrank back, silence filling the room. I could see the fear in her eyes, the sudden realization that she'd finally been caught. I stood, straightening my shirt. I'm done being part of your games. If you want love, start with honesty. Start with respect. Then maybe someone will listen. Until then, this, I gestured to the folder, is your reflection. Rachel sat frozen, unable to reply. Her designer bag sat innocently beside her, like some cruel emblem of all she had prioritized. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and said, "Goodbye, Rachel. And good luck figuring out what real love looks like." The door clicked behind me. Silence reigned in the apartment, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. I didn't look back. Walking down the street, I felt lighter than I had in months. The anger, the frustration, the sense of betrayal, they were still there, but they were sharpened into clarity. I knew exactly what I wanted in a partner now. Someone who measured love in presence, honesty, and respect, not debt. And Rachel, she'd have to face the consequences of her choices alone. The following morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. Not from Rachel, those had stopped the moment I walked out, but from mutual friends who had heard about the confrontation through the grapevine. Some were shocked, some were amused, and some sent me private notes of support. One friend even joked, finally. Someone handed her the bill she's been running up for years. I couldn't help but smile. Rachel, meanwhile, was nowhere to be found. Her phone went straight to voicemail, her texts unanswered. I didn't expect otherwise. When someone treats love like a credit card, they aren't interested in conversation, they're interested in damage control. By mid-afternoon, though, the story had spread. Friends started contacting me, recounting what they had heard from Rachel herself. Apparently, she had spun the incident to make herself seem victimized. Daniel humiliated me over money. But the truth was louder than her narrative. Friends who had seen her at brunch, or at the store, or posting online while claiming illness or stress, quietly corrected her version. I watched it unfold like a slow-motion domino effect. People who had once admired her shopping habits began to see the reality, entitlement masked as romance. It wasn't a matter of me being petty or cruel, it was about exposure. I hadn't made her a villain. She had already done that herself. By evening, she tried calling again. This time she left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, desperate. "Please, Daniel, we can talk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I can pay you back." I deleted the message before it even finished. I didn't know her reply. I didn't know her forgiveness. The lesson had been delivered clearly and irrevocably. Love isn't a ledger to be settled with money, and manipulation has consequences. The rest of the week went quietly. I spent time with friends who valued honesty, laughed at absurd memes, and slowly, a sense of freedom replaced the tension that had hung over my life. I realized how much I had been weighed down, carrying her expectations and her bills in my mind, long before I ever actually opened that folder. By the weekend, Rachel's posts had stopped altogether. I assumed she was rethinking her priorities, or at least trying to save face. It didn't matter. I had made my point. I had drawn a line, and anyone worth my time would respect it. For the first time in a long time, I felt entirely in control. I hadn't just defended my finances, I had defended my dignity, my boundaries, and my sense of what a real relationship should look like. And in doing so, I realized that some lessons can only be taught through action. I smiled as I tossed the folder into the recycling bin. The numbers no longer mattered. What mattered was the freedom I had reclaimed and the clarity I now carried into the next chapter of my life. By the following week, life had settled into a calm rhythm I hadn't felt in months. Without Rachel's demands and manipulations hanging over me, I noticed how much mental space she had been occupying. Every purchase, every social obligation, every sigh of complaint had added invisible weight, and now it was gone. I could breathe again. I ran into some friends who had witnessed parts of the confrontation. They were careful at first, glancing at me to see if I'd lost my temper or overreacted. But when they realized I hadn't, when they saw how calm and collected I was, they laughed, and the tension broke. "Man, you handled that like a pro," one of them said, shaking his head. "I don't know if I'd have had the patience for it." I shrugged. I didn't need patience. I just needed honesty. And the truth always wins in the end. Meanwhile, Rachel's social media posts grew quieter. Dramatic selfies, the luxury hauls, the endless captions about stress and hardship, they all disappeared. Friends mentioned she had been trying to explain herself, but the story had already circulated too widely. The moment she tried to rewrite reality, her credibility crumbled. People saw the gap between her words and her actions. Some quietly called her out. Others distanced themselves altogether. I didn't gloat. There was no satisfaction in watching someone else face consequences. Not really. The satisfaction was internal, a quiet sense of justice. I had stood my ground, and I had refused to be manipulated. That was all the victory I needed. Walking through the city that weekend, the air felt sharper, clearer, as if I could finally see everything around me without distortion. I realized something important. Love should never be a transaction. It's not measured in dollars spent or bills paid. Love is about presence, honesty, and shared responsibility, and entitlement and manipulation. I stopped by a small cafe I liked and ordered a coffee, savoring the peace. No arguments, no calculations, no inflated expectations, just the simple pleasure of living my life on my own terms. I smiled to myself, thinking about how much lighter I felt, how much more room there was for people who actually deserved my time and energy. Rachel had wanted a partner she could exploit, someone to cover her debts while she chased luxuries. I gave her exactly what she earned: accountability. And as I sipped my coffee, I knew I had one in a way she would never understand. Some lessons are expensive, some are painful, but some, the ones that teach you self-respect, are priceless. And that, I decided, was worth more than any designer bag. If you've made it this far, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.